It happened on a Tuesday. That's what I keep telling myself, like naming the day makes it more digestible. Tuesdays were always our day. For 28 years, Mark and I went out for coffee on Tuesday mornings. Rain or shine. It didn't matter what was going on, school drop-offs, work deadlines, even chemo treatments. That one year, Tuesdays were ours. So when I woke up and the bed was cold beside me, I didn't think much of it. I figured Mark was already in the kitchen, probably cursing the new coffee maker like he always did, muttering about how nothing with more than 2 buttons should belong in a kitchen. But the silence felt off, not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that lingers too long, the kind that warns you before you know what it's warning you about. I padded down the stairs in my robe, still half dreaming, still expecting to smell the burnt toast he always insisted he didn't burn. Instead, I found him in the hallway, hunched against the wall near the stairs. His hand was pressed flat against his chest, and his eyes were wide and panicked, like he was trying to anchor himself to the floor. "Mark?" asked, my voice too calm, too slow. He looked at me like he'd forgotten how to speak. I dropped to my knees beside him. "What's happening?"
Talk to me.
"What is it?"
He tried.
God, he tried. His lips moved, but the only thing that came out was a groan so low it barely made it past his throat. I called 911 with shaking fingers, the operator's voice too calm, my heart too loud in my ears. I remember her asking if he was conscious. I remember saying yes, then no. I remember pressing my hands against his chest, whispering, "Stay with me," even though I knew he was already gone. By the time the paramedics arrived, I was still doing compressions. I didn't stop until they pulled me back gently, like I was the one who needed saving now. Massive heart attack. That's what they called it.
Sudden.
Fatal. No warning. Except there was. He'd been tired for weeks. Not sleeping. Complaining of pressure in his chest. But every time I asked him to see a doctor, he'd laugh it off. "Susan," he said just 2 nights before, "you worry too much. You're going to give yourself a heart attack before I ever do." The irony should have made me laugh. Instead, it made me drop to the floor beside the living room couch after they took him away and sob until I thought my ribs would crack. It wasn't just losing him. It was losing everything we'd built together. The routines. The inside jokes. The way he always insisted we listen to jazz while we cooked dinner, even though I hated jazz. And in the middle of all that grief, I did what instinct told me to do. I called my son. Liam. My only child. My heartbeat. The phone rang 4 times before he picked up, voice groggy. It was 11:42 a.m. "Mom? Everything okay?" His tone was distracted, irritated even. "No," I whispered. "Liam, your dad collapsed.
He's gone."
He had a heart attack. They tried, but... Wait. He cut me off, and I heard rustling, like he was moving through sheets or brushing someone off.
Hold on.
Is this serious? I froze. I just told him his father was dead, and he was asking if it was serious. He sighed, then muttered, "Mom, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back? Tasha's got a client meeting, and we've got people over." People over?
I didn't even respond.
I just stared at the floor, mouth open, breath caught somewhere in my throat. "Are you still there?" he asked. I hung up, not out of anger, out of instinct. Like my brain couldn't handle hearing one more syllable of detachment from the boy I'd carried for 9 months, whose colic I soothed night after night, whose scraped knees and first breakups I'd bandaged and healed. The silence afterward was suffocating. Louder than sirens. Louder than grief. I sat back on the floor, gripping Mark's coffee mug, the one he used every Tuesday. I couldn't cry. Not then.
Not yet.
I was too shocked. Not by his death, but by Liam's indifference. I checked my phone again. No follow-up. No text. Not even a voicemail. That night, the house felt colder than it had any right to. I crawled into our bed, still unmade from a morning, and stared at the ceiling until my eyes blurred. Mark's phone buzzed on the nightstand. One missed call. Sent last night. To Liam. No answer. No voicemail. I pressed the phone to my chest and felt like I was holding both a secret and a wound. The next morning, I planned the funeral alone. I called Liam again. This time, he let it go to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I wanted him to come on his own. I wanted to believe he still had that instinct in him. But as I stood at the podium days later, my hands trembling over the paper I had rewritten 5 times, I scanned the rows of people who had come to say goodbye.
Colleagues.
Neighbors. Old friends. Distant cousins. No Liam. No Tasha. Not even a flower scent in his name. It was as if Mark had died and taken our son with him. But that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. Because exactly 4 weeks later, Liam got a letter from my attorney. And what was inside that envelope would turn his world upside down. I never raised my voice. I never sent a message. But I made a decision Liam would never forget. And I never said a single word. Before we continue, take a moment to let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to more powerful stories like this one. The letter arrived on a Friday. A simple white envelope. No special markings. No dramatic stamps. Just his name typed neatly on the front. Liam Prescott. Return address? The law firm of Davenport, Sloan and Frey, tucked inside a nondescript building downtown. The same firm Mark had used for years to handle taxes, wills, property transfers, everything you never think you'll need until it's too late. According to my attorney Alan, Liam opened it at 2:17 p.m. after signing for it in that lazy, careless scrawl he'd used since high school. He stood at the kitchen island of their sleek, granite-covered condo, Tasha a few feet away holding her phone, scrolling. He didn't expect anything unusual. Maybe a statement. Maybe some probate paperwork. Nothing serious. But as soon as he unfolded the pages inside, the air in that kitchen must have shifted. Because this wasn't a request. It was a revelation. A full summary of Mark's estate transfer. And a formal notification. Liam had been removed from the beneficiary list, effective immediately. Everything, our home, the joint savings account, Mark's private retirement fund, even the lake property Liam always assumed would be his, was being rerouted into a newly established family trust with one sole beneficiary, my niece, Claire. Not his cousin. Not someone he even knew well. Claire, who lived across the country and visited maybe once a year, twice if her schedule allowed it. Why Claire? Because Mark trusted her. Because Claire had never once asked us for money, not even when she lost her job during the recession. Because Mark once told me, if something happens to me and Liam's still chasing status instead of values, I want to know someone decent has their hands on what I worked for. And now, Liam had proof that his father meant it. The letter included an appendix of financial transfers from the last 3 years.
Dates.
Amounts. Notes. All from Mark to Liam. $5,000 here. $7,200 there. A few marked urgent. One labeled wedding planning. Liam never told me about those. Mark never said a word either. But the real blow came in the final paragraph, short, brutal, undeniable. This trust was created in response to evidence of financial misuse and emotional abandonment, documented prior to Mark Prescott's death. This is not an act of revenge, but of responsibility. All decisions have been notarized, witnessed, and legally filed. Do not contact Susan Prescott regarding this matter. That line in particular hit him hard. Do not contact Susan Prescott. He'd always called me Mom. That formality must have made it feel like the door had been bolted shut from the inside. Tasha was the first to react, of course. According to Claire, who got a furious DM later that day, she screamed. Demanded Liam get a lawyer. Accused me of being unstable from grief and coerced by someone with an agenda. But it was Liam who froze. Because underneath the anger, the indignation, the disbelief was fear. Fear that he had finally gone too far. And for the first time in his life, there would be consequences. He didn't call me that day. Or the next. But his silence didn't fool me. I knew what came next. Panic, manipulation, attempts to regain control. So I waited. And I remembered. I remembered the first time Mark questioned Liam's choices, not as a parent, but as a man. It was a year before Mark died. We were in the sunroom, sipping coffee, sunlight pouring in through the sheer curtains. Liam had just visited the week before and had left in a flurry of tension and excuses. "He only ever comes when he needs something," Mark had said, staring out at the backyard. "It's like we're a layaway plan, not parents." I defended him then. I always did. I said he was busy, stressed, trying to build a life. But Mark looked at me with a softness that was all the more devastating. "Susan," he said, "I want to believe that. But when you're drowning, the last thing you need is someone who keeps pretending they're on a rescue boat while holding a hole in the side." That stuck with me, even after Mark died. Especially after Liam didn't show up to the funeral. The next time I saw Liam, he was standing outside my door with his hands in his pockets, that same old habit he had when he was hiding something. It was the following Monday, 5 days after receiving the letter. He didn't call ahead, didn't ask permission. He just showed up. I didn't invite him in. I opened the door halfway and waited for him to speak. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from lack of sleep. His hair was unkempt, his shirt wrinkled. A man unraveling beneath the weight of his own choices. "I got the letter," he said. I nodded. He looked down, then back at me. "Did you know?" I didn't lie. I was there when it was signed. His face fell. It wasn't just about the money. It was about control. Mark had made a decision without him, and I had stood beside him as he did it. "Why, Claire?" he asked. "You should ask yourself that," I said. His eyes narrowed. "That's not fair." "No," I replied, "but it's honest." He looked like he wanted to argue, to launch into some long-winded explanation about misunderstandings, timing, context, anything to shift the blame away from himself. But before he could open his mouth, I added, "I know about the money. All of it. I know about the texts you ignored. I know about the night Mark tried to call you and you didn't answer. I know about the weekend trip you refused to cancel, even when I begged you." His shoulders slumped. "I thought you'd understand," he mumbled. "We didn't know it was serious." "It was your father," I snapped. What else did it need to be? The silence that followed was intense. It was final. I could see it in his face. He wasn't going to apologize. Not really. He was here to assess the damage. To see if there was a backdoor, a loophole, a sliver of leverage. There wasn't. Mark had made sure of it. "Tell Tasha not to text Claire again," I said quietly. "She's not your enemy. She's just the person Mark trusted more than his own son." He flinched like I'd hit him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it slowly, like I was sealing a chapter of my life shut, one that had been bleeding for years without me realizing. I leaned against it once it clicked closed, heart pounding, tears finally coming. But they weren't for Mark this time. They were for the son I finally knew I'd lost long before that Tuesday morning. And as I slid down to the floor, hands trembling, I whispered aloud the one truth I could no longer ignore. Love doesn't excuse betrayal. Not anymore. 3 days after I closed the door on Liam, a bouquet of white roses appeared on my front porch. No note. No sender. Just 12 tightly wrapped blooms, cold from the delivery van, perfumed with a scent that made my stomach turn. I didn't bring them inside. I left them out there all night, watching them from the living room window like they were a test I hadn't agreed to take. By morning, their petals had begun to droop. And by then I was sure they were from Liam. Tasha, maybe. She was always the one who believed that flowers could fix anything. A post-fight peace treaty in a vase. But I wasn't interested in symbols anymore. I was interested in truth. And I had a growing suspicion I hadn't even scratched the surface. It started with the call from Alan. He sounded hesitant, like he didn't want to be the one to say what came next. "There's something I need you to see," he said. "What kind of something?" Mark left a supplemental file, sealed. He said to only open it if Liam contested the trust or showed up at your door uninvited after it was finalized. I felt the blood drain from my face. He did. Alan paused. "Then I think you're ready." The file arrived via courier later that afternoon. Thick manila envelope. Mark's handwriting on the front. "For Susan, if it ever comes to that." I stared at it for an hour before opening it. Inside were 3 things. A letter from Mark. A flash drive. A photocopy of a signed contract between Mark and Liam dated March 2nd, 2020. The contract was a loan agreement. $45,000. Issued in full. Signed by both of them. Marked. Interest-free. Repayment expected within 24 months. There was a clause in Mark's handwriting at the bottom. If the amount is not repaid in full or if Liam misrepresents the loan's purpose, I reserve the right to pursue legal and personal action, including disinheritance. My hands shook. He never told me. Not once. I pulled out the flash drive and plugged it into my laptop. A video popped up, simple title. June 14th, final conversation. I clicked play. The footage was from Mark's office, his study, to be exact. The room I never entered unless invited. I could see the wood-paneled walls, the old globe in the corner, the soft amber desk lamp casting warm shadows. Liam was sitting in the chair across from him, arms crossed, face set in that familiar wall of defensiveness. I just don't understand why you're making this into such a big deal, Liam said, his voice clipped. Because it is a big deal, Mark replied calmly. I gave you $45,000, Liam. You said it was for Tasha's medical bills. Now I'm hearing it went toward the down payment for that new condo. Liam didn't answer. Mark leaned forward. You lied to me. And more importantly, you used your mother's name to get my trust. I froze at that line. Use my name? Mark continued, voice firm but tired. You said Susan was worried about Tasha, that she asked me to help. I asked her last night. She didn't even know you'd called. Liam muttered something I couldn't hear. What was that? Mark asked. Liam looked up. She wouldn't have understood. Mark just shook his head. You're right. She wouldn't have. Because she still believes you're a good man. But I'm starting to see through that fog. The video cut off there. 10 minutes of silence followed. Then I opened the letter. Susan, if you're reading this, then the outcome I hope to avoid has arrived.
I'm sorry.
I wanted so badly to believe Liam would change, not just for us, but for himself. I didn't tell you about the loan because I didn't want to put you in the middle. And I didn't want you to feel what I already suspected, that he's been playing us for years. Tasha's condition, their finances, all of it, smoke and mirrors. I kept records, documented every transaction, and left them with Alan. You don't need to do anything unless he tries to force your hand. And if he does, I trust you to protect what we built. If you're still unsure, check the bank statements from April 2020. He didn't just lie to me, Susan. He gambled with our legacy. Mark. I stood up too fast, the letter falling from my lap. My knees went weak, but I caught myself on the edge of the dining table, heart pounding. Gambled? I raced to the file drawer in the hallway. Mark had always kept meticulous records, organized alphabetically and by year. It didn't take long. April 2020. 2 wire transfers. One for $10,000. Another for $3,800. Both to an account labeled TRX Holdings. I Googled the name. A crypto startup. Now defunct. Gone in the wind along with thousands of investors' savings. I covered my mouth with my hand. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't the misunderstanding. Liam had lied, taken our money, and invested it in something speculative, something volatile. And when it collapsed, he told no one. He didn't apologize. He didn't even blink. And now, months after Mark's death, after skipping the funeral, after brushing off the call, he was sending flowers and waiting for forgiveness? Not this time. That night, I called Alan again. I want to make the amendment, I said. He didn't ask which one. I wasn't cutting Liam off. That had already been done. No, I wanted to take it further. I wanted to leave a letter for Liam too. Just like Mark left one for me. But mine wouldn't be warm or hopeful. Mine would be the last truth he'd ever get from me. Cold, legal, final.
I didn't sleep that night.
I didn't even try. The house creaked in that way old homes do when they've been quiet for too long, and every shadow in the hallway looked like a memory trying to haunt me. I sat at the kitchen table with a pen, a legal pad, and a glass of wine that I never even touched. The letter had to be perfect, not poetic, not sentimental, not emotional. Just true. Because that was all I had left to offer Liam. The unvarnished truth. No motherly edits. No softening the edges. No pretending that all of this, Mark's death, the lies, the silence, hadn't led us here. It took me 3 hours to write it. I rewrote some lines 4 or 5 times. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to make sure he couldn't misinterpret a single word. When I was done, I folded the pages carefully and placed them inside a thick envelope, which Alan had labeled with a gold sticker marked Personal Addendum, Liam Prescott, do not open unless instructed. I left the envelope with Alan the next morning. He flipped through it, eyebrows raised slightly as he skimmed. This is sharp, he said. It's honest, I replied. He nodded. You understand, if something happens to you before this is delivered. I want him to read it, I said. Even if I'm not here to see it. Alan tucked it away into the same locked file drawer where he kept Mark's documentation. And just like that, the final conversation between me and my son was no longer mine to deliver. It was a matter of law. But Liam wasn't done yet. That Friday, he showed up again. This time, he brought reinforcements.
Tasha.
She stood a full step ahead of him on the porch, like she was the one in charge. Her designer coat, perfectly waved hair, and sunglasses on a cloudy day made her look more like a crisis PR rep than a daughter-in-law. I opened the door halfway, same as before. Tasha didn't wait.
We need to talk, she said.
I disagree, I replied. She huffed, pulling her glasses off with theatrical irritation. Susan, this has gone far enough. We understand you're grieving. Everyone does. But what you're doing, what I'm doing, I cut in, is cleaning up the mess your husband made. Tasha glanced sideways at Liam, her lips tightening. He said nothing.
Typical.
Look, she continued, I don't know what Mark told you before he passed. But whatever narrative you've bought into, it's hurting the family. You're being manipulated by people who don't even belong in your inner circle.
Claire?
Really?
Ah.
There it was. The real reason she was here, inheritance rage. She had seen the trust documents.
Or at least parts of them.
Claire was there when Mark died. I said, voice even. You weren't. Liam wasn't. That's not fair. Liam started. What's not fair, I snapped, turning my gaze to him, is you ignoring your father's last phone call. What's not fair is me finding out about your fake medical emergencies, your crypto disasters, and your casual theft of everything your father built after he was already gone. His face turned pale. Tasha jumped in again, angling her voice into something that tried to sound reasonable. You know what Mark always said? Family comes first. He wouldn't want you to tear this family apart over a few misunderstandings. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. A hollow one. Mark did say that. You know what else he said? That if Liam ever lied to me again, he'd cut him off.
Completely.
So no, this isn't a misunderstanding. It's a consequence. And for the first time, Liam looked like he understood it. Not just the words, but the reality. Because I wasn't raising my voice. I wasn't crying. I wasn't asking questions. I was finished. You came here for answers, I said, but you already got them, delivered in a letter, signed and sealed by the man you ignored until it was too late. Tasha's jaw clenched. You'll regret this, Susan. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday you'll wish you had handled this differently. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Funny, I said. That's exactly what Mark wrote about Liam's choices. The only difference is he was right. I shut the door. This time, I locked it. Not for safety.
For peace. But it didn't last.
The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Claire. She rarely called, always texted. But this time, her voice trembled. Hey, Aunt Susan, she said cautiously. I thought you should know. Someone's been reaching out to my employer, asking questions about my finances, trying to make it look like I manipulated you into naming me as the beneficiary. I felt my hands grow cold. Did they say who?
They didn't have to, she said.
The HR director said the guy called himself Tasha's legal representative. But the number? It traced back to Liam's phone. There it was. The smear campaign. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called Alan.
Pull the file, I said.
He didn't hesitate. Within 2 hours, the letter I'd written was on its way to Liam's legal address, via certified mail. Delivery confirmed at 2:42 p.m. He opened it at 3:09. How do I know? Because that's when my phone lit up with a text. How could you write that about me? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The letter said everything. Liam, I'm writing you this not as a mother, but as a woman who spent her entire adult life building something worth preserving, and who refuses to let it be dismantled out of obligation to someone who treats family like a fallback plan.
Juvelit.
You've manipulated. You've gambled away trust and called it stress. And when confronted, you didn't apologize. You brought lawyers. This is not about money. It never was. This is about legacy and the kind of man your father feared you were becoming. He tried to protect you, even when you didn't deserve it. But now, I'm protecting what's left of him. And I'm done pretending that love means loyalty at any cost. You will not receive another dime from me.
Not now.
Not in death. Not ever. You've already inherited the most dangerous thing a man like you can receive, silence. And I'm taking it back. Susan. He called 5 times that night. I didn't answer. And when he tried one last time the next morning, blocked number, of course, I let it ring until voicemail. His message was only 4 words. You're making a mistake. But the only mistake I made was thinking he would have shown up for his father if I hadn't asked. When a liar runs out of excuses, they don't look inward. They look for someone to blame. And that's exactly what Liam and Tasha did next. 1 week after I sent the letter, Alan called me with a voice colder than usual. They're preparing to challenge your mental competence, he said. Tasha's reaching out to a probate attorney who specializes in contested wills. I stared out the window at Mark's old rose bushes. My breath caught. They're saying I'm unstable?
I asked.
Alan sighed. Not in those words, but it's implied. Grief-stricken. Uncharacteristically combative. Influenced by outsiders. You know the drill. I did. I'd seen it before. Widows with too much clarity made people nervous. Women who didn't crumble when expected were labeled irrational. And mothers who stopped forgiving were suddenly confused or manipulated. I wasn't shocked, but I was deeply, dangerously insulted. I thanked Alan and hung up. Then I sat in Mark's study for almost an hour, hands resting on the arms of his old leather chair, thinking about what to do next. That's when I started the folder. Not a legal one, Alan already had that. No, this was for me. For insurance. For Ava. Because if they were going to come after my mind, I was going to meet them with proof that mine was sharper than it had ever been. I opened my laptop, created a folder titled Prescott Defense, and began. Emails. Voicemails. Photos of Tasha at parties on nights she'd claimed to be overwhelmed with grief. Screenshots of Liam's deleted social media posts from that weekend getaway during Mark's funeral. Yes, the one with the champagne toast and the matching robes. Receipts of transfers, flagged messages, even the doorbell camera footage of their smug little standoff on my front porch. And then, just for insurance, I ordered a full cognitive evaluation. Voluntarily. I sat with a licensed neuropsychologist, answered 142 questions, completed memory drills, logic tests, even drew a damn clock when asked. Her verdict? Mrs. Prescott, your mental faculties are in the 93rd percentile for your age group. You're not only competent, you're formidable. I asked her to write that on the letterhead. She laughed. Then did. I added that to the folder. And then I waited. It didn't take long. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Certified mail. Return address from Tasha's new legal rep. I didn't even open it. I just slid it unopened into the folder and emailed Alan. Incoming. Will drop off tomorrow. By that point, my anger had burned clean. What was left wasn't rage. It was resolve. That weekend, I got an unexpected visit. But not from Liam. From Claire. She showed up unannounced, arms full of groceries, her hair swept back in that way that reminded me so much of her mother. I thought you could use a meal that doesn't come in a takeout container, she said with a wink. I couldn't argue. We cooked together lemon chicken, roasted potatoes, a salad with way too many almonds. It was the first time the kitchen had felt alive since Mark died. As we ate, she finally said, "I didn't want to tell you this at first, but Ava reached out to me." I blinked.
Ava.
Claire nodded. She said she wasn't sure who to trust, but she found my email on an old card you sent. Said she overheard her mom talking about how they could make you look unfit, and that if you cracked, the will could be reopened. I swallowed hard. "She's scared," Claire added. "Not for herself. For you." That night, I found Ava's message in my inbox, short, tentative, brave. "Hi, Claire. I'm sorry to bother you. Mom and Dad are talking about Grandma like she's confused, but she's not. I hear everything. Grandma isn't wrong. I just don't know what to do." I wrote back immediately. "You did the right thing, Ava. Always trust your gut. I'll handle the rest." Then I wrote a second email. To Alan. Subject: New witness. The next few days passed like a storm with no thunder. Quiet.
Tense.
Then, on Tuesday, Alan scheduled a formal mediation. "They want to avoid court," he said. "That tells me they know their case is weak." I nodded slowly. "What do you want to do?" I looked down at the folder in my lap. Everything organized. Dated. Annotated. Then I looked at Mark's photo on the mantel, his smile steady, eyes kind, the way he always looked when he trusted me to steer the ship when he couldn't. "I want them to sit across from me," I said. "And I want to watch them lie. Knowing this time, I'm recording every word." Alan smiled faintly. "Then let's give them a seat at the table." The mediation was scheduled for the following week. But just 2 days before it, I received a call that changed everything. It was from Ava's school. Her principal. "Ava's been pulled from her classes," the voice on the other end said. Her parents didn't give a reason, just said she'd be homeschooled starting immediately. The phone slipped in my hand. "Is she okay?" I asked, panic rising. "She's fine. But she left something behind." There was a pause. "She left you a letter." The envelope was folded 3 times, its edges softened by trembling fingers. When I opened it, I recognized the handwriting immediately. Ava's careful, looping script. She had always written her letters like someone who thought they might be graded, each line pressed straight and centered, as if the words themselves needed order to survive the chaos. It began simply, "Grandma, I'm sorry I had to leave school without saying goodbye. Mom said it was just for a few weeks, but she and Dad have been arguing a lot lately. Not loud like yelling. Quiet like when you know something bad is coming, but no one wants to talk about it. I'm writing this because I don't know who else will believe me, but I think they're planning something. Something about you. I heard them say she's cracking, and we'll get everything back." I paused, my hands trembling. "They said if you lost capacity, then the trust could be reviewed." Dad didn't say much. He just kept asking if it was too late. But Mom was sure. She said she could get a doctor to sign something. I think they want to make it look like you're confused or sick. But I know you're not. You're the smartest person I know." I found Mom's notebook. I didn't mean to snoop, but she left it out in the kitchen. There were names and dates, lawyers, a list called Susan's Strategy. It had things like public incident and doctor's note, grief plus meds. I took pictures. I don't know if they're helpful, but I saved them on a flash drive and hid it in the back of my bookshelf behind the photo of me and Grandpa for my 5th grade graduation. "If something happens to me, if I'm not allowed to talk to you, please find it. You always said truth matters more than convenience. So here it is. I love you,
Ava."
By the time I finished the letter, I was shaking. But it wasn't from fear. It was righteous fury. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. It wasn't just about money or bitterness or the inheritance they thought was stolen. This was warfare, and they were willing to weaponize my mental health to win it. They weren't just trying to silence me. They were trying to erase me. And the only person who dared to speak up, the only one who had been quietly gathering truth in a house built on lies, was 12 years old. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps. Every shadow in the hallway made me flinch. I sat in Mark's chair with the letter in one hand and a copy of the trust in the other, and I made a promise to myself. I would not let Ava become collateral damage. The next morning, I drove to their house. I didn't call first. Didn't knock when I arrived. I rang the doorbell and waited, Ava's letter tucked in my coat pocket like armor. Tasha opened the door, surprised but composed. She wore a silk robe and held a mug that read #MomBoss, her smile tight like she thought she could still win this through charm. "Susan," she said, stepping forward slightly, "is everything." "I want to see Ava," I interrupted. Her smile faltered. "She's not feeling well today. Probably just." I held up the envelope. "I have a letter. From her principal. She left it behind. And I know what you're doing." Behind her, I saw movement. Ava, standing quietly at the top of the stairs, half hidden behind the banister. Her eyes met mine. I nodded once. Tasha stepped in front of the doorway. "You need to leave." "You're trying to make me look unfit," I said. "You're tampering with witnesses. You're isolating a minor who left behind documentation of your plan." Tasha's eyes flared, but before she could speak, Liam appeared behind her. His face was drawn, hollow-eyed. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "Mom," he said, but his voice cracked. I looked past both of them, straight at Ava. "You were right to write the letter," I said. "And you're going to be safe. I promise." Tasha moved to close the door, but I held it firm. "I've already contacted CPS," I said. "They have the letter. And the photos. And the folder Ava mentioned? I've got it now." Their faces changed in unison, Tasha's twisting into rage, Liam's into panic. "You're bluffing," she snapped. I smiled faintly. "Try me." Then I let the door close. And I walked back to my car, heart racing, fingers cold, but with a clarity I hadn't felt since the morning Mark died. Back at home, I pulled out Ava's flash drive and began going through the files. It was all there. Photos of the notebook. Scans of legal pad scribbles. A screenshot of a text from Tasha to someone named Dr. Felton, reading, "Can you write something up about cognitive decline? Grief plus stress. Nothing aggressive. Just enough to raise concern." And at the very bottom, a video recording. Grainy. Captured from behind a cracked bedroom door. It showed Tasha pacing the kitchen, voice sharp and clipped. "I don't care what she wrote in that trust. If she goes off the rails in front of the mediator, we can file for a psychological review. She's old. It won't take much. One outburst, one breakdown. Liam, this is how we win." The clip ended with Ava's whispered voice. "This is wrong. I know this is wrong." I sat back in my chair, jaw clenched, heart pounding. They didn't just want the money. They wanted to erase my credibility, rewrite the story, replace truth with a performance. But now I had everything I needed. I forwarded the files to Alan. Then I picked up the phone and called the mediator directly. "I have new evidence," I said. "And when you see it, you'll understand why I want this hearing to proceed in person." Because I wasn't just going to defend myself anymore. I was going to expose them. The room was painted in neutral tones. Cream walls. Polished gray table. Soft chairs designed to make conflict feel civilized. But no chair is soft enough to cushion the weight of betrayal. I arrived early. Alan sat beside me, calm as ever, a leather folder on the table containing everything. Ava's letter, the flash drive files, the audio recordings, the screenshots, the video. It looked like a simple folder, but it was a wrecking ball in disguise. Tasha and Liam arrived 7 minutes late. Tasha walked in first, heels sharp against the tile, wearing a blazer 2 shades too bold for subtlety. Her smile was tight. Her eyes scanned the room like it was a stage, and she was about to deliver the performance of a lifetime. Liam followed behind her. His gaze never met mine. His suit was wrinkled, his posture slack. He looked like a man dragged to his own public unmasking and knew it. The mediator, a woman named Karen Chen, greeted us politely and gestured for everyone to sit. "I'd like to begin by acknowledging the sensitivity of this situation," she said, her voice calm and deliberate. "We are not here to assign blame. We're here to clarify intentions, review legal documentation, and ensure that all parties are being heard. Tasha wasted no time. If I may, she said, adjusting her blazer and sitting forward, we believe Mrs. Prescott has made some decisions that may not reflect her long-term values or mental clarity. No one's accusing anyone of wrongdoing. But in light of recent erratic behavior and outside influence, we feel it's appropriate to request a cognitive review and temporary suspension of the trust's execution. Alan didn't blink. Mrs. Prescott has already undergone a full neuropsychological evaluation, he said evenly. Passed with exceptional results. We've included a notarized copy in the evidence folder. Karen opened the folder and scanned the document. Tasha didn't flinch. Of course she didn't. She had rehearsed every possible objection. But testing can be manipulated, she said. We're not saying she's incompetent. We're saying grief clouds judgment. Susan's always been compassionate.
Fair.
She would never disown her only child unless she was being pressured. That's when I finally spoke. Funny, I said quietly. I could say the same about your daughter. The words hit like a hammer wrapped in velvet. Tasha turned, eyes narrowing. Karen looked between us. Mrs. Prescott, do you have any material you'd like to present that might clarify your intentions? Alan slid the flash drive across the table. Everything is timestamped and verified. Karen inserted it into her laptop. The screen lit up with a file list. Ava lettered PDF. Notebook photos / textlog.png. Audio clip 1.mp3. Kitchen recording MOV. Tasha went pale. What is this? She asked sharply. Ava's voice, I said. Liam flinched. The video loaded. We didn't even play the whole thing. Just 37 seconds of Tasha pacing in the kitchen, voice unmistakable. If she goes off the rails in front of the mediator, we can file for a psychological review. She's old. It won't take much. One outburst, one breakdown. Liam, this is how we win. Silence followed. No one breathed. Tasha looked stunned, but not surprised. Liam looked sick. Karen paused the video. Is this real? She asked, voice suddenly taut. Alan nodded. It's been authenticated by 2 third-party analysts. Karen turned to Liam. Did you know about this plan? Liam opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes shifted toward me, but I didn't soften. Because what I needed now wasn't an apology, it was accountability. Karen's voice hardened. I need to inform both of you that this crosses into potential custodial manipulation and witness tampering. Your daughter is a minor. Her attempt to preserve this evidence may have saved her from being removed from your household. Tasha exploded. This is ridiculous. That child is confused. She doesn't understand what she's hearing. This woman, she pointed at me, has poisoned her against us with stories and secrets and God knows what else. Karen raised a hand. Miss Prescott, sit down. You are dangerously close to a misconduct ruling. And if I receive even one more piece of documentation suggesting coercion of a minor, I will escalate this. Tasha's mouth moved, but no words came out. For once, she was speechless. Liam put his head in his hands. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know she was recording anything. Karen turned to me. Do you still wish to proceed with the trust as written? I looked her in the eye. I do. Karen nodded. Then this mediation is concluded. The trust remains intact. The documentation is sufficient. And should either party attempt to challenge its contents again, this evidence will be filed with the court. Tasha stood up, grabbed her bag, and stormed out. But Liam remained seated. He looked at me like a man seeing his mother for the first time, not as a soft place to land, but as a wall he'd been pushing against for years and had just realized would never fall. He said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Later that night, I received a message. It wasn't from Liam. It was from Ava. Grandma, I heard what happened. I'm okay. I'm staying with a friend from school for now.
Thank you for believing me.
I don't feel scared anymore. Also, my birthday's next week. Can I come over? Just us? No candles. Just quiet. I responded instantly.
Yes.
Always yes. I stared at the screen for a long time after that. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, sat in Mark's chair, and let the silence of victory wash over me. Not a triumph, but a reclamation of truth, of voice, of legacy. Ava arrived an hour early. I was still setting out tea when the knock came, gentle, almost shy. When I opened the door, she stood there in a lavender sweater, backpack slung over one shoulder, her curls tied back in a loose ponytail. The last time I saw her, she looked small, shrunken under the weight of secrets too heavy for a child. But not today. Today, she looked tall, not in height, but in presence. "Hi, Grandma," she said softly, stepping forward. I opened my arms. She collapsed into them. For a moment, we didn't speak. Just stood there, in the same hallway where her father had once taken his first steps. Where photos still lined the walls. Birthday hats, Halloween costumes, a long-ago Christmas morning when Mark wore a Santa beard made of cotton balls and Ava had laughed until she snorted. "You okay?" I whispered. She nodded against my shoulder. "I am now." We spent the afternoon in the backyard under the willow tree. I made her favorite, grilled cheese with tomato soup. She told me about school, about the friend she was staying with, about how the girl's mom worked as a librarian and let them take home extra books. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. Am I going to have to live with Dad and Mom again? I put my spoon down. "You're not a chess piece, sweetheart," I said. "No one gets to move you around without your voice being heard. That time is over." She blinked at me, lips trembling. They said I betrayed them. I reached across the picnic table and took her hand. "You told the truth," I said. "That's not betrayal. That's bravery." We didn't talk about the trust. We didn't talk about the video or the legal folder or the courtroom that might still come, depending on what CPS decided. We just talked about things that mattered to her. How she wanted to be a writer. How she was learning how to code. How, lately, she'd started rereading some of the letters Mark used to leave in her lunchbox. "He always drew cartoons," she said, smiling. "Even when the notes were short. I kept some of those," I said, getting up. Inside, in the bottom drawer of the hutch, was a small wooden box Mark had labeled Ava's treasures. It held crayon doodles, a broken plastic crown, a Father's Day card from when she was 6, and 3 napkin notes in his handwriting. I brought it back outside. She opened it slowly, her hands moving like she was handling something holy. The smile on her face, wide and warm, was more healing than anything a court ruling could provide. "Do you think he knew what was happening?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, then nodded. "He knew enough," I said. "And he believed in you." That was always enough for him. Later, when the sun began to dip, I brought out a cupcake with a single candle. I hadn't planned a big party.
She didn't want one.
But she smiled at the sight of the flame and closed her eyes tightly. "What did you wish for?" I asked as she blew it out. She looked at me and said, "That one day I'll be strong enough to help someone the way you helped me." It was the kind of line you never forget. The kind that lives in your chest long after it's spoken. That evening, we sat together on the living room floor, flipping through photo albums. She pointed to one of Mark in a ridiculous Hawaiian shirt, arm around a 10-year-old Liam. "Was Dad ever like me?" she asked. I paused. "He was kind," I said. "Curious. A little sensitive. He used to collect baseball cards, not because he liked the sport, but because he loved the smell of the gum inside." She smiled. "Then what happened?" I shook my head. "That's not for me to answer. But I do know this: some people carry their pain inward. Others try to control what they can't fix. But the ones who break the cycle are the ones who learn to name it and still choose kindness." Ava looked down at the photo, running her fingers across the page. "I hope I stay kind," she said. "Even when people aren't." I reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You will. Because you already made the hardest choice a person can make. You stood up when it would have been easier to stay quiet." She stayed the night. It was the first time in months that her laugh filled the hallways, echoing off the walls like music. We played board games. We made popcorn. We watched an old cartoon Mark used to play for her when she had nightmares. At bedtime, she crawled into the guest room, climbed beneath the soft blue quilt I'd sewn with her initials stitched at the corner, and looked at me with sleepy, half-closed eyes. "Will I get to come live here one day?" she whispered. My throat tightened. "If that's what you want, I'll make it happen." She nodded once, then turned onto her side. I left the door cracked, just like Mark always had, and walked to my room with a strange ache in my chest. Not sadness. Something more sacred. Something like hope. The next morning, as I poured coffee and watched Ava stir sugar into her cereal, a knock came at the door. I opened it to find an envelope sitting on the mat. No postage. Hand-delivered. I bent down and picked it up. To Susan Prescott. From Liam. I hesitated, unsure whether to open it at all. But something about the weight of it felt different. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. Scrawled in his handwriting, no legalese, no signature blocks. Just this. I didn't know how far it had gone. I let her steer everything because it was easier than facing what I did. But Ava sees the truth now. And I can't run from that anymore. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I hope one day, I'll at least deserve the chance to try again. Not as a son. Maybe just as a man trying to do one right thing. I won't contest the trust. You have my word. Tell Ava I'm proud of her.
Elle.
I didn't cry.
I didn't fold the letter into my chest.
But I did place it beside Mark's photo. Because he would have wanted to believe that some part of our boy was still in there. Not to excuse the damage, but to honor the small, flickering light of change. The invitation came in a pale blue envelope, sealed with a gold sticker. Ava had chosen it herself. Inside was a single handwritten card.
Grandma.
I got accepted to the Young Voices Forum. It's a citywide event. Only a few kids were chosen to speak. I submitted a piece I wrote about truth, legacy, and what it means to love someone even after they've hurt you. They said it was quietly powerful. Will you come? You're the reason I could write it in the first place.
Love.
Ava. I held the card for nearly an hour, tracing my fingers over the edges like it was something sacred. She hadn't just survived the storm. She had turned it into a message. The forum was held in an old brick auditorium downtown, restored from the bones of a public library. Wooden beams stretched across the ceiling. Light filtered through high stained glass windows. Rows of folding chairs filled the space like a gathering of hopes stitched together. I sat in the second row, aisle seat. The program listed Ava last. The closer, the woman next to me whispered. That's always the big one. Tasha and Liam were not in the room. Ava had made that decision herself. She said she needed to speak freely, that their presence wasn't about support, it was about performance. They'll hear about it, she said simply, but I don't want to see them watching like it's a show. When her name was called, she walked out with steady feet, holding a single sheet of paper. The room quieted. The microphone adjusted. She took a breath, then began. When you're young, you think truth is something loud. Something that slams down like a gavel or shouts in a courtroom. But I learned that truth is sometimes a whisper. A hidden flash drive. A letter tucked under a pillow. A grandmother who refuses to let silence become inheritance. The room leaned forward. My grandfather died before I could ask him the things I needed to know. But he left behind something better than answers. He left behind someone brave enough to hold the questions until I was ready. I felt my throat tighten, not from grief, but from the profound stillness of being seen. Sometimes, the people who love you will fail you. They'll lie. They'll forget what you're worth. And sometimes, the people who save you aren't the loudest ones in the room. They're the ones who show up, who listen, who refuse to rewrite the truth just because it's more convenient to forget.
She paused.
This is for them. The ones who stayed. The ones who said, I believe you, even when it cost them everything. The applause was immediate. Not thunderous, but reverent. The kind of applause that comes when a room knows it's witnessed something real. She stepped down from the stage and walked straight to me, weaving past people reaching for her hand. She didn't stop until she reached my chair. I stood. She wrapped her arms around me and whispered, That was for Grandpa, but also for you. The days after the forum were full of quiet momentum. Letters arrived from teachers, judges, even the editor of a local publication asking if Ava would consider letting them publish her piece. But the most unexpected letter came 3 days later. It was handwritten. From Liam. Not typed. Not lawyered. Just him. Mom. I watched the speech online. I didn't deserve to, but I did. Ava was incredible. Everything she said, every pause, every word, was exactly what I never had the courage to say out loud. You raised her right. I didn't. But I want to try now, even if it's too late to do it with pride. You don't owe me anything. But thank you for protecting her. For giving her a chance to tell the truth. I won't reach out again unless she asks me to. I'll wait. I've started volunteering at a support center. Just once a week. Not because I think it makes up for anything, but because I needed to be useful.
And honest.
For once.
Liam.
I read it once. Then again. Then I folded it and placed it in a new folder in the filing cabinet. Not one labeled legal or evidence. This one was labeled forgiveness. Pending. Because some things take time. And others take rebuilding brick by brick. 2 weeks later, Ava came to stay with me full-time. Temporary placement first. Then permanent. Once the court ruled in her favor with testimony from her school, her counselor, and the overwhelming file I had already assembled. On her first night, she brought her suitcase into the guest room and said, "Can we paint it yellow?" The room, not the suitcase. I smiled. Of course. We spent the whole weekend doing it. Not the soft kind of yellow, but a vibrant sunflower gold. The kind of color that refuses to whisper. One evening, I found her in the study, Mark's study, sitting in his leather chair, legs curled beneath her, a book open and her notebook beside it. She looked up at me. "Do you think Grandpa would be proud?"
I didn't hesitate.
"I know he is." She grinned. "Me too." Then she held up her notebook. "I'm working on something. A book, maybe. About girls who tell the truth. Even when it hurts." I kissed her forehead. "I'll be your first reader." And in that moment I knew this legacy wasn't just protected. It was alive. The courthouse was quiet when we arrived. Not the kind of tense silence that clings to high-stakes hearings, but a gentle one, like a place where something heavy had finally settled into place. Ava walked beside me, holding my hand like she had when she was 5 and afraid of escalators. But this time, she wasn't scared. She was steady. Today wasn't about drama or declarations. Today was about closure. About making everything real, on paper, in law, in legacy. The judge was a silver-haired woman with kind eyes and a voice that didn't need to be loud to command a room. She glanced down at the file on her desk. Petition to confirm custodial guardianship of Ava Prescott to maternal grandmother Susan Prescott, as per the recommendation of Child and Family Services, with written assent from both biological parents. I squeezed Ava's hand. She squeezed back. The judge looked up. "Ava, is this what you want?" Ava nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Her voice didn't shake. She didn't glance at me for reassurance. She was already her own witness. And that was when I knew we were no longer just surviving. We were building. After the hearing, we celebrated the way Ava wanted. Not with cake. Not with fanfare. But with a walk through the botanical gardens downtown. Mark used to bring us here once a month. He loved the koi pond. Always claimed they could recognize his footsteps, though I suspected he just liked tossing in the little food pellets. Ava wore his old fishing hat, oversized and floppy, and tossed crumbs into the water, watching the fish swarm with joy. He used to pretend one of them was named Edgar, she laughed. He said Edgar was the boss fish, I smiled. The one who made all the rules. Ava looked out across the water. "Then I think I'm Edgar now." I put an arm around her.
Yes.
"Yes, you are." We stopped by a bench near the garden center, under a sycamore tree with a plaque that read, "To those who stayed, even when they weren't believed." Ava took out her journal and began to write. I didn't ask what it was. I knew I'd read it someday, when she was ready. Instead, I pulled from my purse a small, gift-wrapped box. Inside, a simple silver locket, oval-shaped, elegant, engraved with the initials MSB, Mark's full name. She opened it slowly. Inside were two tiny photos. On one side, Mark, holding infant Ava in his arms, grinning like the world had just begun. On the other, the two of us under the willow tree, her leaning on my shoulder, both of us mid-laugh. Ava held the locket to her chest. "I don't need protection anymore," she said softly. "But I'll still wear this. For the reminders." I looked at her, taller now, clearer-eyed than most adults I'd ever known, and realized she wasn't just the future of this family. She was its correction. That night, as she unpacked her books into the shelves of her new yellow room, she handed me a sealed envelope. "To be opened on my 18th birthday," she said with a grin. I raised an eyebrow. "A reverse tradition?" She nodded. "Thought you might want to turn." I laughed, then kissed her cheek. "Deal." Weeks passed, then months. Ava flourished. She joined a young writers' workshop, started speaking at small community events, was even asked to contribute an op-ed for the local paper titled, "What We Pass Down Matters More Than What We Leave Behind." It went viral, not for its drama, but for its honesty, its clarity, its Ava-ness. One morning, over breakfast, she handed me an envelope from the mail.
"Liam," she said.
I blinked. She shrugged. "It's okay. I already read mine." I opened it slowly. Inside was a short note. Just a few lines.
"Mom,
I still don't know how I let it get that bad. But I've started writing it down. Not to rewrite the past. Just to finally look at it." Ava sent me a copy of her speech. I keep it in my wallet. "Tell her thank you. And tell Dad I'm trying."
Liam."
I folded the letter, tucked it into my drawer beside the others. It didn't fix anything, but it didn't have to. Some stories don't get endings. They just get better beginnings. On the anniversary of Mark's passing, Ava and I visited the lake house, now empty, quiet, waiting for new life. We brought fresh paint, a box of new tools, and 2 years' worth of laughter packed into the trunk. "I want to turn it into something," Ava said. "A retreat. For people like us. People rebuilding." I smiled. "A place for truth to live." She nodded. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like we were chasing ghosts. We were planting something new. That night, I sat on the dock with a cup of tea, the water calm, the air gentle. Ava joined me, barefoot, notebook in hand. She rested her head on my shoulder, then whispered, "You didn't just save me, Grandma. You taught me how to save myself." And in the stillness that followed, I felt something unspoken settle between us. Not grief, not revenge, not even forgiveness. Just peace. The kind that doesn't ask to be named. The kind that knows it's earned. Sometimes the legacy we leave behind isn't money or property. It's the truth we dared to speak, and the courage we passed on to those still learning how to use their voice. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We tell stories that deserve to be heard.